Throughout the years, we've witnessed the historic downfall of empires once thought indomitable. Rome, the British Empire, Blockbuster Video, AAA games playable on launch day, luscious big hair, attention spans, and of course the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For over a decade, the MCU solidified itself not only as the highest grossing film franchise beloved by fans, but every outing was a global event.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
In less than 2 years, the law of diminishing returns kicked into high gear at Disney, so they bet on releasing a surefire hit, Captain Marvel 2. The Marvels, a sequel to the billion-dollar success earned through merit, and definitely not a smart marketing campaign. After months of anticipation, The Marvels is finally on the big screen. However, knowing Marvel's current state, is it really worth your time?
Have you ever heard the expression, the customer is always right?
The Marvels is an exhausting, confusing, and heavily contrived mess that honestly feels like a parody of what the MCU has become. Another modern example on the long list of how not to approach a script. Fair warning, there will of course be spoilers throughout this video, so let's get started. After taking revenge on the Kree by destroying their supreme intelligence, sparking a war that brought Kree homeland to the brink of extinction, Captain Marvel pursues her goal of protecting the galaxy and finding a new home for the Skrulls. In retaliation to Captain Marvel's past actions, current Kree leader Dar-Ben seeks out the second quantum band with the goal of using its power to transfer oxygen, water, and a sun to her homeland. Whilst using this energy, Miss Marvel, who possesses the other quantum band, Monica Rambeau, who works with Fury on the Saber Station, and Captain Marvel's powers intertwine, forcing the unlikely trio to band together and stop Dar-Ben before she completes her mission and destroys the universe.
Let's watch some crazy stuff, yo!
Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, Miss Marvel. These were the ingredients chosen to create the perfect cookie-cutter Phase 5 film, but Kevin Feige accidentally added an extra ingredient to the concoction, a poorly conceived plot. Thus, The Marvels was born.
TV from other dimensions has a somewhat looser feel to it.
Yeah, it's got an almost improvisational tone.
The Marvels' weakest aspect is by far the script. Even though on paper, a Freaky Friday superhero scenario could be incredible, the film failing to establish clear rules was ultimately its downfall. In short, Miss Marvel, Monica Rambeau, and Captain Marvel switch places whenever their powers are used.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Several rationalizations are provided by the writers for the audience to understand specifically when the switch occurs. For starters, it's whenever 2 or 3 characters use them at the same time. However, the film literally disproves this a scene before explaining it. Secondly, the film implies it's only when a specific light punch is used, but once again, this gets debunked in a subsequent scene.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious.
As a consequence of this, The Marvels lacks one of the 3 main components of storytelling: stakes. Because of this, the film inadvertently writes itself into the Superman dilemma, in large part due to our immensely overpowered trio. How overpowered? Well, Miss Marvel and Monica Rambeau can single-handedly harness enough energy to rip a hole into space-time, whilst Captain Marvel could emit enough energy to restart the sun.
See, now that's some bullshit.
So, without a clear-cut definition of the concept, as an audience, we assume their powers can be used as they please, which begs the question, why should I care when seeing them in artificial danger? A great example is this sequence, shown in the trailer. For context, Captain Marvel flies into the atmosphere, switches places mid-air with Kamala Khan, and it's now up to Monica, who's never flown before, to save her. Above all, we need to incorporate stakes. To achieve this is quite simple. Set up Monica's inability to fly. A prior 1-minute scene of Fury coaching her on Saber would suffice. In addition, show her actually struggling to do so while Kamala plummets. The audience knows she can't do it. Fury knows she might not be able to do it, turning the scene into a ticking time bomb.
Oh, it's cool. It's character.
Small issues as such plague the Marvels, frustratingly so because as demonstrated they require 1-minute fixes and can equally be amplified by a cohesive execution of the Freaky Friday concept. It's a shame the power switch solely occurs when the plot requires, as it wastes a simple yet profound concept that could have tackled themes such as what defines a hero, their powers or actions achieved without them, as well as overcoming adversity as a team in a way that would have been unique to this film. It's even on the fucking poster, for Christ's sakes.
You're a fucking idiot.
Now, in spite of my critiques, The Marvels does actually demonstrate what could have been. There's a singular 15-second sequence where Captain Marvel engages in combat without the use of her powers against multiple enemies in close quarters. What ensues is a captivating and creative fight where you can actually feel her in danger.
How the fuck would you show me something if I couldn't have it then? The fuck would you bring this out?
Exacerbating the aforementioned problems. After a fight, characters are conveniently dropped off where the plot requires them, equally wasting a substantial amount of opportunities. Furthermore, The Marvels suffers from what I call a danger level downgrade, which also impacts stakes. Simply put, our heroes' battles don't get tougher throughout the runtime. For instance, after the film's already established its gimmick, Captain Marvel annihilates over a dozen Kree soldiers in under a second, yet 6 minutes later seemingly struggles against 4. This logic extends to our villain as well, who not only defeats our superheroes multiple times, but tanks their powerful hits, only to get defeated by falling rubble. A great example I use of upgrading danger levels are these two gems. The former frames a single xenomorph as an insurmountable task for 116 minutes. This means when we get to the latter, including multiple xenomorphs, let's just say your audience subconsciously knows nobody's making it out in one piece.
I got signals, I got readings in front and behind.
Where, man? I don't see shit.
Moreover, the Marvels' script is chock full of contrivances necessary for the plot to work. This is when you feel the writer's hand enter the scene to artificially solve or create situations instead of them possessing a logical narrative flow. I won't list them all, although here are some rapid-fire major ones. Valkyrie ridding our heroes of the Skrull refugees, Captain Marvel being too slow to save Monica Rambeau, Dar-Ben targeting a water planet where Carol is married to the prince, Miss Marvel not suffering the same fate as Dar-Ben, and newborn Flurkins obeying Nick Fury's orders.
Coincidence? I think not!
Additionally, the film doesn't know what to do with its side characters, whom include Saber's staff, Fury, and Miss Marvel's family, who were brought to ground zero instead of a safe house, considering the fate of the multiverse is once again at stake.
You always lose me with that. You say, the fate of the multiverse, and my brain dies.
The script relegates them into a treasure hunt B-plot, culminating in said treasure being dozens of Flurkin eggs laid by Goose. Finally, the film's plot is dragged down by other miscellaneous issues, such as poor dialogue and muddled themes of family, sacrifice, and accountability. In essence, what you see is what you get, lacking poignant subtext in character actions and power dynamics to make anything feel more than one-dimensional. To end this segment on a positive note, which the film possesses more of once we leave the confines of the plot, The Marvels manages to make its breakneck pace work, wasting no time starting and finishing our journey without dragging along, with the exception of a few exposition-heavy scenes. When it comes to the Marvels' characters, not much can be said. Dar-Ben, played by Zawe Ashton, simply put was a cosmic villain of the week on par with the MCU's roster of disposable menaces. Sadly, she lent no gravitas to the character, delivering such a forgettable performance I couldn't recall the villain's name once the credits rolled, not helped by the unremarkable costume design and subpar script.
To impress, you must express.
Dar-Ben would have fared better if insight was given about her life throughout Hala's civil war, or us simply witnessing the current state of Kree's homeland for over 30 seconds. In turn, this should have provided weight to her crusade and grudge against Captain Marvel. As for our titular heroes, they lack properly defined arcs, in spite of the film setting some up, although miserably failing to deliver. Miss Marvel, aka Kamala Khan, played joyously by Iman Vellani, is the film's most fleshed out character, as she is canonically 16 in the Marvels, destined to either join or form her own superhero team in the near future. It's natural for the film to push Miss Marvel into experiencing loss for the first time. The script does so by letting Khan witness Tarnax's genocide, in addition to losing Rambeau and experiencing cosmic dangers firsthand, a far cry from street-level thugs she's accustomed to. In execution, it misfires for one main reason. These experiences don't shape her character, due to being forgotten seconds after the fact, barely acknowledged except in a singular scene in which she forces Carol to leave a war-raging Aladna, which consequently isn't brought up again.
It's just as I expected.
On top of that, Miss Marvel also suffers from a massive costume downgrade that feels like a dollar store version of her original suit. Out of the trio, Monica Rambeau had it worst, trying to move on from her mother's death while projecting her grievances onto Carol Danvers, whom she believes abandoned her as a child.
I had to do a fucking double take. I said, bitch, are you serious?
With such poor foundation, it's no surprise the internal conflict was resolved by a 2-minute discussion, although I do commend the writers for understanding Rambeau's emotional maturity.
If you won't let us go, just let us die.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
Teyonah Parris, whom I can assure you is a good actress, was completely wasted on a one-note performance. On the plus side, she did possess the best costume of the titular trio. Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers, equally suffered. As I stated before, her sequel arc had been set up back in 2019, although was concluded off-screen, which left her with one loose thread, finding the Skrulls on Tarnax a new home, which was literally achieved in a phone call. Nevertheless, the Marvels builds on this to offer Carol a redemption arc, righting her wrongs towards Hala. Captain Marvel's arc and Dar-Ben's motivations share the same core issues. We don't know enough about Hala to care for it as an audience. The easiest way to fix this and kill two birds with one stone is by using the Joss Whedon method. Insert an inhabitant's POV, giving us a ground level understanding of how bad the current situation is, whether it be through Dar-Ben or one of her henchmen. Brie Larson gave an acceptable performance, whereas you can actually tell she's having fun on camera, although light years away from being her best. I do honestly think it's a shame Iman Vellani, Teyonah Parris, and Brie Larson were failed by an insubstantial script. They are fantastic actresses when given proper material. Fuck me, man, Brie Larson's a Best Actress Oscar winner. Watch Room and Short Term 12 if you want to see what she's truly capable of. However, I do think it's important to not solely accuse the script, as it's been proven that great actors can still deliver shitty performances depending on the director. In my opinion, it ultimately comes down to a concoction of a mediocre script and poor direction, here from Nia DaCosta.
You need to keep both eyes open.
Last but not least, Nick Fury. Pursuing his Secret Invasion's character assassination, Samuel L. Jackson clearly isn't invested in the MCU, portrayed this time not as a frail old man, but as a preteen in an old man's body. In spite of the failure that was Secret Invasion, the Marvels actually had an opportunity to redeem him. Piggybacking on his unprocessed grief from seeing Talos and Maria Hill, two of his closest friends, get murdered, the arrival of a young Miss Marvel during a galactic crisis should have seen him step up as not only a mentor but protector, shielding her from the excessive violence while also understanding that
with great power comes great responsibility.
Subsequently, this position would actually balance out Kamala's character, who's a fan of Fury, the latter consoling her after the disappearance of Rambeau, Monica Rambeau in turn having been her on-site mentor throughout the film. Taking care of Miss Marvel filled the void left from not having been able to provide the same for her deceased mother. This script decision would have provided depth and satisfying payoffs for Fury, Rambeau, and Khan in a self-contained arc, while Captain Marvel dealt with her own. Alas, instead of that, this is the Nick Fury we ended up with.
That it was siphoning off the atmosphere, and it did this!
Scissors, be paper.
Cut.
The Marvels' score, composed by Laura Karpman, also responsible for What If and Miss Marvel, was a bland symphony with operatic elements that never quite evoked intended emotion or particularly stood out of the never-ending homogeneous sound plaguing the modern live-action superhero genre. The 28-track score consists of a heavy usage of trumpets, horns, violins, and marching drums, creating recognizable superhero fanfare, although does try implementing recurring leitmotifs from Miss Marvel and prior Captain Marvel outings, failing miserably. I do find that surprising on account of Laura Karpman making it work in Miss Marvel, in addition to creating an original soundtrack full of personalized elements for Kamala Khan, especially in her titular theme. I'm also genuinely convinced a majority of the Marvels' tracks are lazy duplicates with little to no modification. I would like to point out that this approach is achievable and has been proven to work by Oldboy. However, in the latter's case, these modifications mirrored our protagonist and antagonist's current sentiments and evolution throughout the runtime. Definitely not the case here.
온 세상이 너와 함께 웃을 것이다. 울어라. 너 혼자만 울게 될 것이다.
As a result, nearly every track sounds alike, and a tiresome listen ensues after less than a dozen have been heard. To add insult to injury, the film's main themes, Higher, Further, Faster, and The Marvels, are a shameless, slowed-down version of Michael Giacchino's Spider-Man Homecoming theme. The score's overall main problem is an absence of direction, throwing anything at the wall to see what sticks, in turn lacking cohesion in singular tracks themselves, causing multiple melodies to fight each other. I guess you could say it was tailor-made for an incoherent script. Sadly, the worst aspect is how the score adds nothing of value to the film other than background music, and don't even get me started on the lazily made one-track musical number. As a massive fan of musicals, either fully commit or don't bother, especially for a sequence as short as 6 minutes.
You had one job.
With that said, there are a few exceptions from the homogeneous lot. Titles such as Arrival on Tarnax, Entangled, and the latter half of the 7-minute track Evacuation are all somewhat original, in addition to at least trying to complement the on-screen story. Set pieces manage to evoke emotion with their unique use of repetitive melodies, crescendoing through a revolving door of instruments, eliciting curiosity and ultimately transforming into tragedy. Say what you will about Captain Marvel, but at least Pinar Toprak's score was cohesive and retains a certain replayability. The Marvels' soundtrack, on the other hand, boasts electronic-heavy songs from the likes of Skrillex, MIA, and the Beastie Boys, with the exception of Barbra Streisand's classic, Memory. Having an already wonky orchestral-centered score, the attempt to harmonize both genres falls flat, especially during the fight scenes.
I guess dubstep never dies.
These jarring sound shifts end up complementing the film's hectic editing rather than the actual score. If you truly want to see how both soundtrack and score can perfectly mesh, I suggest rewatching Across the Spider-Verse. On the cinematography front, the film prioritizes wide to ultra-wide angle lenses and lots of camera motion to stage scenes, notably with one of the Marvels' best aspects: fight choreography. These sequences containing our protagonists are where the film burns brightest. Nevertheless, constant 180 rule breaks coupled with a highly caffeinated editor render them hard to follow with ceaseless cuts. If the sequences were grounded to a singular location, there would be no issue, but an altering setting numbs you out quickly.
Not a great plan.
A one take from a select character's perspective would have better suited the action. In general, the film's editing follows a quick cut trend, ineffective to speeding up the pace, although harming overall cohesion due to location switches. For example, when the conversation between two distant parties ensue, instead of using a comic split screen or establishing shot, then lingering on the second character for the duration of said conversation, the editor rather incessantly cuts back and forth at almost every line uttered.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
As mentioned, the Marvels takes us across the galaxy to the Saber space station, a barren red wasteland, a random-looking mountainside with wavy houses, a planet supposedly covered in 99.3% water where water isn't involved in its inhabitants' way of life, and my personal favorite, Earth. Evidently, not much effort was put into making these locations unique or appealing, easily mistakable for a random corner of Earth, amplified by obvious green screen usage and the volume.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't. But I've considered it.
I will, however, compliment the practical sets built for these sequences, albeit most of them are devoid of charm and life, from the building's designs to depiction of the planet's cultures in the background, definitely not helped by an almost white monochrome.
They're the same picture.
Contrast these for a second with prior MCU space adventures that, from establishing shots alone, elicit intrigue, taking you to clearly lived-in worlds with weird creatures and distinctive customs. I do pity the costume department that tried their best to make Aladna a colorful, whimsical world, but the rest of the film didn't do them any favors. Speaking of Aladna, as I said before, if you're going to do a musical number,
do or do not. There is no try.
From a filmmaking standpoint, the sequence lacked the artistry that makes musicals a one-of-a-kind visual genre, mostly due to the points I made before. There is supposedly an extended cut, although if it's more of what was shown, Marvel can keep it. Surprisingly, the Marvels doesn't suffer from major eye-popping VFX in comparison to phases 4 and 5, except for a few scenes and the Flurkin army. To lend the film some credit, photorealistic CGI household pets still aren't commonplace, so it gets a pass. Small side note, the Flurkin attack could have been a great way for Nia DaCosta to show her range as a director, turning it into a proper horror sequence. After all, she is responsible for 2021's Candyman. To end on a positive note, Ms. Marvel's hand-drawn animation segment was fantastic, full of charm and reminiscent of what old Disney was capable of. I actually wish it had been longer. Did I personally enjoy the film?
No.
Despite a short runtime and fast pace, The Marvel was a mess from start to finish, failing on the bare-bones basics of storytelling through its incapability to provide stakes, logic, or a single character arc, in spite of boasting 3 main leads. Despite trying with its cinematography and fight choreography, a bland musical score and soundtrack continuously drag it down.
It's ridiculous, right? And it's nonsense.
I'm genuinely not sure who this film is aimed for. However, if you wouldn't like your basic intelligence insulted multiple times over the course of 90 minutes, I suggest watching something else.
Fighting crime, trying to save the world, here they come just in time, the Powerpuff Girls.
Thank you all for watching and sticking around this long. I hope you enjoyed the video. Do subscribe and drop a like if you did, and hopefully, I'll see you all next time.